everyone, welcome to Duo 3. I'm Lester and today I would like to do a comparison between Subtotal and the various functions that are built within Subtotal, comparing them such as average, sum, and comparing the various functions within Subtotal itself. So recently somebody has started asking hey, how come Excel itself, right? Why do they have replicator functions, right? There's average function within the subtotal, sum function within the subtotal. There are the various counts and standard deviation function, which is also available outside of the subtotal function. So today I'd like to do the simple comparison to share with everybody why do we have subtotal function within Excel, and how do we actually fully maximize the potential of this particular function. So if you guys are not already familiar with the functions that I am going to share today, the sample of how to use the function is already shown in cell column I, right? So let's use the data set that we have already available here. So for average, let's use the column H, which is the amount that the users have transacted in this particular example. So holding Ctrl Shift and down, you will highlight everything in column H and hit on enter, right? Similarly, let's do the same for sum, right? And then followed by the subtotal, right? So the subtotal, you'll find the various functions that is already nested within the subtotal function. So there's average, count, and sum will be number 9. So for average is number 1. So we'll use the function number 1 followed by a comma, and we'll do the same thing, right? Pick up the entire data set within column H. Similarly, for subtotal sum, hit on 9, right? And then pick up all the data sets. So here in this instance, you realize that hey, the average and the subtotal average actually gives us the same identical result. So you will find the similar pattern in the sum function as well, right? So basically, if you don't do anything to the data set, subtotal function gives the same result as the normal average and sum functions that we have available outside of subtotal. However, the subtotal function is especially useful if you are using filter within your dataset. So in this instance, let me do a filter under payment. Let's filter for the Amex dataset, right? So after filtering out for just the Amex dataset, right, you realize that the subtotal function now gives us a different result, a drastically different result from the average and sum function, right? So what the subtotal is actually picking up, so I have my commentary here as well, it only includes cells that are visible or have been filtered out by the user, right? So how do we actually know what the result is supposed to be, right? The expected result of subtotal. So let's highlight the entire data set that is currently visible or has been filtered under the H column, right? So for Excel, you will find that there are some fixed default functions that we have that is already available here in the right bottom corner of the Excel panel. So there's the average, the count, and the sum function here. So if we look at here, if you hover over the average figure, it says average of selected cells, right? So this means that it only calculates the average for the cells that are visible. So here you see 84.17, which ties into the subtotal amount. So this is because subtotal does the same thing. It only picks up cells that are visible to Excel at that particular point in time. So let's filter for even more specific data sets. So let's pick appliances alone. So for appliances alone, you see there are only 13 data sets, right? 13 data sets. The sum of it is actually 1483, right? 1483.88. However, do note that the average and the sum functions remains unchanged. Unchanged because the average of and the sum function picks up the entire data set, regardless whether it's hidden or if it's filtered. So the data doesn't change regardless of how you filter your data out. However, the subtotal function does change depending on how the user filter the data. So this is especially useful, like let me reinforce this again, this is especially useful when you are trying to you have the filter or the auto filter turned on, and you are planning to use the filter to pick up average, sum, or whatever function that is built into subtotal. It will pick up only the cells that are visible. So I hope this session has helped clarify like the difference between different functions between subtotal and the normal functions like sum and average. So I hope this session has been useful for you guys in understanding the differences between the various functions, and I look forward to sharing more of these differences or any queries that you guys might have next time. Thanks.